Scenarios are a great way to add lean-forward content to your e-learning courses. Use them for things like soft skills training, simple question and answer interactions, or real-world assessments and knowledge checks. In this tutorial, we'll learn the basics of creating scenarios in Rise using the interactive scenario block. To create a scenario, you need to start in a Rise lesson. So we're going to click on All Blocks. That's going to open up the block library. We're going to go to Interactive, and then scroll down and you'll find your scenario block. Go ahead and insert that. When you insert the scenario block, you're going to get some placeholder content. The very first time you go through that, you're going to see some guiding text, and that'll help you understand how the scenario is set up. Scenarios are made up of scenes, and so inside the scenes, you also have characters, and then you have a background image, and then you have different types of content. So this right here is what we would call text content. We click on the continue button, and then the second type of content is dialogue content. Now dialogue content is always going to have your character. The character is going to say something, and then you're going to have some potential responses. So how do you respond to what the character says? And when you click on a response, you're going to get feedback. So in this case, this feedback here is incorrect, and we're going to branch to try again. So let's go ahead and click on that. Now I can see that the character's expression and pose changes. So I get some visual feedback, and I get my text feedback, and then that one was set to branch to try again. So I click on that, and that's going to take me right back to the beginning so I can try that again. Now this one's going to continue on, so let's go ahead and click on that, and you'll see that the character's expression changes. I get some other feedback, and then my branching option is to continue, and we can click on that. You'll also notice we highlight a couple of other branching features as well, so you can end the scenario or you can retry the scenario. So let's go ahead and build a scenario from scratch so you can see how that works. So we're going to go to the Edit option, so click on Edit. Now this is that placeholder scenario. You can always go through that when you first get started. It's really a good way to understand how the scenarios are structured. What I want to do is delete this, and we're going to build something from the ground up. To delete a scenario, just mouse over the thumbnail, click on it. You'll see the option to duplicate a scenario, or you can delete. We're going to delete it. And now we're going to have a blank scenario. Now, when you add a scenario, you're always going to start with scenes, and then inside the scenes, you're going to have content that you can add down here. So let's go ahead and add a scene. And when you select a scene, you need to add a background image, and you need to add a character. I'm going to go ahead and edit the background first, and I can upload an image if I have my own images, or I can search Content Library. We're going to click on that, and you can see we've already pre-sorted some scenario ready images, and you can sort through those. You can always search up here if you want to add or search Content Library if you want something different, or as we showed earlier, you can also upload your own images. I'm going to go ahead and choose this one with the bricks. So I've got my background. You'll notice we blur out the screen a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and add our character. And you can see we've got our content library, the photographic characters here. You can scroll through those. You can always sort those to find the image that you want. In this particular scenario, I'm going to use Jet. So I'm going to scroll down, and Jet's right here. So I'm going to go ahead and insert him. And so now I have Jet as my starting character for the scene, and then I have a background image. And now I need to start to add content. Now to add content, when you first create a scene, we're just going to create a content placeholder by default. You can also add additional content down here. So let's go ahead and add new content. When you add content, you've got two types of content. You can choose dialogue, or you can choose text. Usually at the beginning of a scenario, I like to use the text to kind of just set up the scenario. So I'm going to go ahead and choose text, and I can add a heading and body text. So my heading is an unfinished job. You'll notice that there's a character count here. So each of these text blocks have certain character limits. So that's something to keep in mind when you're adding your content. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some body text. And the body text here is going to set up my scenario. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're building the scenarios, You want to map out your content before you get started. You want to write out your scenario. You know, what's the dialogue? What are the responses? What's the feedback? And then where do you want that to branch to? You want to do all of that before you start working on the scenario. That's going to save you a lot of time. So I've got my title. I've got this here. I'm just setting up the scenario with a text block. I can insert a character or I can hide the character. In this case, I'm going to introduce Tony, so I'm just going to choose the character. You've got some pre-built expressions. If those don't work for you, scroll down, click on More down here, and then you'll see all of the other poses available to you. And then again, you have some filtering and sorting options. I'm just going to go ahead and choose the one where he's holding the notebook. So we'll select that. So let's go ahead and preview what we have. When you go to preview up here, you'll notice that you can preview from beginning, and the other option is you can preview from current. And this is really helpful if you, let's say you have 20 scenes inside your scenario. You don't want to have to go through all 20 scenes to preview, you know, scene 21, right? So you can preview from current. So that would be in the current place that you're at. So we're just going to preview from beginning. And you can see here's our setup. We're using a text block, and we're using the character here. And we're going to continue, and then we'll go into our dialogue. So that's the first part of our scenario. We've set it up with a text block. Now we need to figure out, okay, I'm in this content. What do I need to do next? And this is where we set up our branching. So by default, it's just going to be linear unless you want to branch out. We want to go to, you can see right now we don't have a lot, so it's either end scenario or to new content. Now, if you click new content here, or you click add content here, it's going to be the same thing. So I'm just going to click on add content down here. You can see it adds a content placeholder. I click on that, and now I've got my content. We're going to start with dialogue. So make sure that you have dialogue selected here, and then we're going to add some dialogue. So Tony's going to come in the room and say, "What's up?" And then we need to determine, you know, what's his expression or pose. You can see you've got some choices here, these pre-built choices, or you can click on More and select something else. I'm just going to go ahead and choose the asking. So we've got our asking here, and then I need to add some responses. So let's go ahead and add our first response. So when I add my first response, I notice the character count. I'm going to hit enter. And now I have some feedback. So Tony comes in, says, "What's up?" My first response is, "I noticed you blew out of work early. Didn't you care about your commitment to finishing the report?" What type of feedback am I going to get from Tony? So he may be angry. So we're just going to choose angry. He may be angry. And we can add some text feedback as well. "What do you mean? I work really hard." And again, you can see the character count. And now what do you want to do? So you've got your response. You've made a decision, you get your feedback, what do you want to do? You can choose to branch from here, right? Or you can try again. We're going to go ahead and click try again, and so that'll loop back. So let's go ahead and test this and see how this works. We're going to preview. We're going to preview from the beginning. All right, so there's our continue here. And what's up? Here's our first response. Click on it. His feedback here, his expression changes, we get some text, and we have the try again branching option, and now we branch back. All right, that's working perfectly. So let's go ahead and build out our next two responses. All right, so now we have our three responses, and so what we have is the first response. We choose that. He's angry, we get some feedback, and then we're going to try again. The second one is also not that positive. He's confused, and we get to try again. The third one, "Hey, great job. You made a good choice." And he's stressed. He gives you some feedback. And then we might then want to go to some new content. So let's go ahead and add new content here. So this might be then our next bit of dialogue, right? So let's preview this from the beginning. And let's see how this works. So unfinished job, click on that. "Hey, what's up?" First choice, gives us some feedback. He's angry. Try again. Second choice, he's confused. What? Try again. Third choice, good choice. And he's going to say, hey, I know, you're right, and let me continue. And then we would continue on into the next piece of content, which we haven't added yet. So that's basically how that works when you're building out your scenarios. You can create your dialogue, you add a response to what the character's saying, and then from that you get some feedback. And then once you get your feedback, it's just a matter of determining what do you want to do. Now I'm going to show you kind of a bonus tip in here. So in this case, it's probably obvious that that's not a good choice based on the character's response. So try again might make sense. But what if I wanted to give you some coaching? So if I say, well, that wasn't a good choice. Here's what you want to consider. Now try again. Now, how would I do that? And that's where the new content options and the branching really work well together. So let's go ahead, and for this first one, let's go ahead and add some feedback. So we're going to choose the new content here. And this will be our feedback for question 1. So I need to use a text block first. So we're going to choose text. And I'm just going to add some feedback. We'll paste that in the body text. This is going to be our coaching feedback. So I'm going to use a text block. I'm going to turn off the character, so I'm going to hide the character. And what I want to do is think through the branching. So let's set this up again. So, hey, what's up? I noticed you blew out of work early. Instead of try again, what we're going to do is choose the branching feature, and we're going to go to this 1.3 because that's our feedback. And then at 1.3, we're going to give you some coaching, and then we're going to use the branching feature to send you back to, hey, what's up? So instead of using the try again, we're actually going to branch to a text block with some feedback, and then we're going to branch back to try again. So that's a good use of the branching features in your scenario. So let's go ahead and preview this from the beginning and see how that works. So here's our introduction. Okay, here's my dialogue. The second one we didn't change, so let's click on the second one. This was the default, so we click on the second one. That's going to give us feedback. We do try again, but I don't know why I need to try again, right? So if I click on the first one, this is the one we modified. If I click on the first one and I've got my feedback, I hit continue. Now I'm getting my coaching feedback. You made some assumptions here. Maybe you need to do something different. Go ahead and hit continue. Now you're back here and you can try it again. So you're able to use the branching feature. So that's kind of the essence of working with the scenario block. So you've got scenes, you choose your character, background images. Most likely you're going to use dialogue most of the time, but you do have this option of text or dialogue, and then you're going to determine how you continue from the scenario. So do you want to retry it? Do you want to end the scenario? Or do you want to branch to different types of content or different scenes? So there's all sorts of ways that you can branch and use the scenario block. I'm going to show you one before we get out of here. So let me close this here, and let's go ahead and go to one I've already built out so you can see how this one's structured. All right, so if we preview the scenario, you'll notice I've got my setup here. I'm actually going to preview it in the mobile so you can see what it looks like on a mobile device as well. So we're going to preview the scenario. We click on this. I'm introducing a manager, HR manager, Rosinda Gallo, and she's going to give you some information, and you're going to click through the scenario. She says, hey, great job. Let's get ready to go. And now we're introducing Tony. Let's go back to the laptop view. So we've got Tony here, and you can see I've used a number of text blocks to kind of set up the situation. And now we're going to go into this. Rosinda comes back and says, okay, the first step in the process is to do this. Now I'm going to go back to Tony. He's in a different environment. I make some decisions. I get some feedback here, right? I'll click through that. I'm going to go to the last one. All right, so we get some good feedback here. And there's a coach's feedback, and now we go back to Rosinda, and she says, okay, now step 2, you need to do that. So you can see it's a little bit more complex than the scenario we just built. If we look inside of the scenario, you can see we start with Rosinda, and we've got some content here to set it up, and then we meet Tony. We've got some content, and then we have Rosinda. She sets up the scenario, and then we go back to Tony. We make some decisions, and then you'll notice here I was using these feedback boxes here to provide some feedback. So you've got the text blocks, and then they branch to different slides. So as you can see, once you have a number of slides set up, you can branch to all sorts of slides so that you can build some pretty complex branching scenarios. The key thing when you're working with the scenarios is map out your content, understand that you're not limited to just one scene and one character. You can mix and match scenes like you see here in this example. And there's all sorts of neat things you can do with the scenario block. If you have questions, jump in the community and ask. We're always there to help you out. We want to see what you're building with the tool, and then take advantage of the training webinars where we teach you how to use Rise and then the scenario block as well.